Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Brooks. I'm a pediatric orthopedic surgeon practicing at the Children's Hospital of Mississippi in Jackson, Mississippi. And I am so excited to be here with you today on the Scoliosis Research Society social media platforms. We have an amazing dynamic conversation that's going to be taking place today. And our theme is seeing myself in my surgeon. And we are going to introduce two dynamic surgeons today that are going to help us with this conversation. The first is Dr. Alvin Crawford, who is a emeritus professor at the Children's Hospital of Cincinnati and truly a pioneer in our field of spine deformity. And the second surgeon is going to be Dr. Alvin Jones, who is also a mentor of mine, and he is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon practicing at the Dayton Children's Hospital also. So we're going to bring them into our stream soon and get this conversation going. Dr. Jones, Dr. Crawford, or as I should call Alvin Squared, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Good to be here.
Perfect. So first, I'm going to start with actually Dr. Jones first. Can you please tell us about your background? What did your parents do for a living, and how did this influence you to pursue a career in medicine?
Yes, my parents were both from the South, and they met in Washington, D.C., where I was born. And my dad was in the Air Force, and my mom at the time was a analyst at the National Security Agency. But later on, they got divorced, and so early on, I just really lived with my mom. And she was a very, very spiritual woman and decided to leave the government and went down to get her master's in counseling. And now she works in a nonprofit organization that works with single moms, a lot of times who are struggling with finances and dealing with children. And my dad, after the military, he worked for the post office, but he also did landscaping for people in his community. And that's kind of where I learned my work ethic. I worked with him during the summertime, earned money, but he also taught me attention to detail and getting it right the first time, being smart, working efficiently, so that you don't have to go back and do it again. As far as my mom, she was the one who really taught me more about compassion and service and giving back to the community. So those are my big influences in my life.
But it doesn't sound like you had any doctors that were in your family. You were the first?
Correct. Yeah, honestly, most of my family, including my dad, did not go to college. My mom did, though. She was a Howard University graduate and then went to her master's at Regent University for counseling.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Crawford, same question to you. Tell us a little more about your parents and how did the family environment that you grew up in guide you towards medicine?
Well, first of all, thanks, and thanks to the society for having me here and getting involved with this. I have a unique background in that I'm from Orange Mound, which is a community in Memphis, Tennessee. It was the first planned settlement of African Americans post-slavery, and that I grew up with single parent, not single parent, but single family homes in the neighborhood, no projects and so forth and so on. And so Orange Mound was a very unique community. Having said that, as some, not most unions maybe don't last, my mother and father separated and divorced early, but they continue to be an influence. I was pretty much raised as a single parent family by my mother. And the two are unique in that my mother was very much into us being the best that we could be. As a matter of fact, I come along at a time where there was some stimulation to do your best at all times. And I experienced it. And my mother ended up as a nurse. And she had three children that she was extremely proud of. My sister is an opera singer. She's been in Carnegie Hall 3 times. My brother was an amazing football player and athlete. And so that was the family as we knew it. Uh, my father was a Pullman porter, and as a matter of fact, he was with the Brotherhood of Pullman car porters, and that was A. Philip Randolph, which was the first African American union in the United States. So those were my backgrounds. But growing up in Orange Mountain, we had pretty much everything. There was grocery stores, physicians particularly were there, and it was a unique situation. But I was shielded from a lot of things, and it was rigidly segregated. But Orange Mountain was a very pleasant place to be, and you can read things about it. As far as education was concerned, my mother made it that if we were alive, we would be educated and college educated, and she would look into one part of it. We had to look into the other.
Yeah.
And it ended up that my brother and my sister went to college before I did, and graduated college. And my mother and father didn't. It ended up as a blended family. I have younger siblings, but we were pretty much gone at the time that they were around, so I don't have a lot of follow-up with them. As far as Black doctors are concerned, it was in a day where I was literally treated, better still, my birth was at home, courtesy of one of the OBGYN residents from the hospital there. But there were Black doctors in the community, and we were able to have their facilities available as well as dentists. So no, I came up in that atmosphere and was very comfortable with that. So I had had exposure to African American professionals early in my life.
Perfect. And along those same lines, Dr. Crawford, there are a lot of people that are going to watch this video and then maybe Google your name afterwards. But for many that don't know Dr. Crawford, he basically started anything first in pediatric orthopedics related to a Black surgeon. Dr. Crawford has basically done it, including starting a training program for pediatric orthopedic surgeons in Cincinnati. And that's where it appears that your two paths, Dr. Jones and Dr. Crawford, cross. Mentorship is so important to have a successful career really in any field. But Dr. Jones, can you speak to how the mentorship relationship started between you and Dr. Crawford? And being one of the few Black pediatric orthopedic surgeons in the country, how has that continued to nurture your career over time?
Yeah, sure. And actually, I want to correct something, because thinking back, I actually had another real influence on my life. There are actually more people, now that I think about it, who were educated professionally in my career, in my family. And one was my aunt, and she was the biggest, I think, influence on my interest in science, because she was a science teacher and had a lot of those books. So I definitely have to give her her due and respect for that. And now, as far as Cincinnati Childrens, even before I came, I got an email from Dr. Crawford telling me about how it would be being an Alvin at Cincinnati Children. He's like, it may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing. He's like, but he welcomed me to come into Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And at the time, he was not still operating at the hospital, but he would perform the boot camps on Monday mornings, where the residents and medical students and even the fellows would come and they'd learn more about pediatric orthopedic surgery and the specifics of different diseases. And so that's kind of where we began to meet. And throughout, my stay, there were times where he would reach out and just invite me over. We spent our first Thanksgiving in Cincinnati at his house, me and my wife and family. And it just grew into a more personal relationship, to where now that I'm operating at a different hospital about an hour north of Dayton, I still connect with him, and we're really more closely aligned now. We're like family. He's almost like my uncle, to where we speak about every week now. And I've had the privilege of having tough cases and being able to run them by him, especially when it's a neurofibromatosis case, because he is the neurofibromatosis guru. and always tells me it's got to be 360 degrees of fusion or else it's going to fall apart. So I definitely have reaped a lot of benefits just being close. And it really just started, I think, more out of the hospital with our personal relationship and still being able to lean on him in a professional manner with a lot of the things because we are aligned um, on a lot of different interests, be that professional, be that social, or personal. So I've been able to reap the benefits of being close to such a influential leader in our field, and so yeah, that's kind of how things started.
Yeah. And Dr. Crawford, along those same lines, because you were basically the first to do almost everything that you did, you didn't necessarily have that mentorship. And really, my question for you is, there are going to be a lot of other listeners who are listening to this talk who may not have a mentor to look up to help them to get to where they need it to be. How do they deal with the isolation that may come about with being the only person in their space that looks like them and still wanting and needing that nurturing, but maybe not having it? How do they press on and continue to be successful without maybe having someone that looks like them to look to?
That's a great question. I think it's going to have to take a focus. And, as you say that, during my times through the 60s and 70s, racism was a more effect entity always. So I sort of hitched my wagon to a star. So there was racism. I started out actually in hip surgery. I was an Otto Ofrank fellow. Otto Ofrank at that time was the premier hip arthroplasty surgeon in the world. And I hitched my wagon to him, and he had to make the decision as to whether or not racism would be a part of it. But he was a mentor. He taught me how to develop tissue planes and so forth. And then from that, once I fell in love with pediatrics, John Hall became the mentor. And I assumed that he would be just as receptive. And fortunately, they were. So I have sort of a different philosophy. I could actually extricate myself in that what I wanted was what I wanted. And I was so purposeful in that and directive that I knew that racism was a given. I knew that discrimination was a given, all of those. But I've had the ability to not let that affect my path. My mother was a unique individual. She just implored upon us that you're never to be a victim. If you're a victim of racism, then you say you can't do any of this. Go ahead and do it. And then the world will have to make a decision as to whether or not they would accept you. And I think people who know me, and they sometimes, just as Jason had said, well, how did you do? What did you do? To know that I'm able to sort of separate. I can't separate where I can buy a house or where I can go into and try on a set of clothing and so forth. But I can separate the issue that I'm interested in, and that was pediatric orthopedic surgery. And once that became my issue, that was my issue. Now, I am very comfortable now, and I make an effort to be a mentor to anyone, whether they look like me or not look like me. I can truly say that I have a special affinity because I would love to, as someone had said, you were the first ever in this and the first ever in that. I want to make it very, very possible that I will not be the last ever before I leave this earth. And Jason has made me aware of that. So no, but there are many things. I came up in a different atmosphere. Jason, people have the opportunity to make options now. I came up and society could get away with excluding me because actually when I was in practice early, not in practice, but in residency and in medical school, it was against the law for races to integrate and to socialize. And so through my entire medical school, it would have been quote unquote against the law for me to assimilate. And Boston, and if you know much about Boston, Boston could be just as rigidly segregated. So I let the issue be the issue for me, and the rest was something that I couldn't do anything about, but I could do something about trying to be the best that I could be. And my mother wanted to make sure it wasn't a physical thing as I got to be older. Earlier, it was implicit on me that for my good health, I would be the best that I could be.
Wow, that is awesome. Both of you all practice in Ohio. Dr. Jones, you're in Dayton. Dr. Crawford, you're in Cincinnati. I'm in Mississippi right now, and almost every week that I have clinic and I see patients, for a lot of them, I may be the first Black doctor that they've ever had. It doesn't matter what the patient's race is. I may be the first one that they ever had because there's so few of us, especially in pediatric orthopedics. I'm sure that has been the same case for many of you all. But I want you both to maybe speak to is, does it matter if a patient has a doctor that looks like them or that they can see themselves in? I mean, shouldn't all doctors strive to treat patients as best as we can? So what does it matter what their doctor looks like? Have you guys seen that for any of your patients in the past, that it has mattered that they could see themselves in their surgeon?
Well, I can answer that. The easy answer is yes. And let's face it, life hasn't come to the ultimate unanimity at this point. So surely some people would much prefer to have someone who looks like them. It's found probably more in late age African American males, where there's a trust or distrust of the medical establishment because of quote unquote research and experimentation that was done on them some years ago. But as a pediatric orthopedist, it's really a pleasure sometimes. I'll never forget a little kid coming in, and he was with his mom, and he kept looking for me. I think it was a Perthes. He must have been somewhere between 6 and 10 years ago. And he looked at me and he looked at his mom, says, "Mama, you got to get on Dr. Crawford for not washing his hands." So that has come out, and there's been more than one occasion with that, and I had some pushback from my colleagues, especially my African American colleagues, who said to me, "Alvin, have you lost it?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" So when I hear about all these things about you doing great, but my God, man, you picked scoliosis. Don't you know that scoliosis occurs in about 10 to 14-year-old white girls? Are you out of your mind? Have you lost it? I said, well, no, I've been very fortunate. For whatever reasons, I guess I've been in an atmosphere, and there's no question when you're going to have something, especially like either a surgery or a scoliosis surgery, which takes scoliosis to the next level. The parents and the kids have made some real decisions before I ever intervene with them. Or very definitely after their first opinion, they have made some decisions. And I wanted to have it, in the thoughts of Maya Angelou, the African American poetess, who was having surgery. And so someone said, "Well, what about your surgeon? Was he number one in his class?" She said, "I don't know." Says, "Well, has he done 1,000 of these?" She says, "Well, I don't know." Said, well, my God, do you investigate? She said, "The only thing I know about my surgeon is how he makes me feel." So I've made an effort to have as much rapport and to give them. As a matter of fact, I use something, and Alvin brought it to my attention the other day, of my philosophy of all humans. You'll go through a training program and somebody say, well, in the training, you see this, you see that, and they're not paying customers and so forth. How do you reconcile how you're going to treat this patient versus the next patient? Well, it's the F square principle. And if you acknowledge intrinsically to treat every human that you see with the F square principle, that is, as though they were either family or friend, then you never have to worry about how you're going to treat them. And so I know what I'm going to give you as a patient, be you Black or white. You'll have to decide as to whether or not you're going to accept what I have to offer.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can only echo that. We know that there is some distrust with the medical system in the Black community. So a lot of my patients who are Black look like me. They are overjoyed when they come in and they see me walk into the room. And so I do think that it makes a difference in terms of how they accept the words and the counsel that I'm giving them. And the connection is made because they feel like there's an understanding, and that they have an ally in the medical field who's going to look after their best interests. And so I do think that it makes a difference.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And I think you guys both make an important point. It's not just about Black patients having Black doctors. It's about white and Asian and Hispanic patients having doctors that look different than them, so that everyone can kind of break down some of the preconceived but false notions of what we have about each other. Because truly, when you get to know everyone, you kind of realize that we're all just people. And so that's very profound. Um, Dr. Jones, today, well, actually on June 17th, a couple days ago, President Joe Biden actually signed into law making today a federal holiday, Juneteenth. And I must admit, kind of maybe coming from a Caribbean background, Juneteenth wasn't really on my radar until I got a little bit older. But if you could explain for some of our listeners who may not have been watching the news, like what is it about Juneteenth? Why is this an important date? And why should people care, especially in the field? I mean, not necessarily in the spine deformity field, but should spine surgeons know what this day is about, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so I really do think that this is a critical event that just happened because we've gone through several years of some disappointments, I feel like, and socially as Black people in this country, with a lot of the very, very prominent killings of Black men that we've seen in the news. So, we kind of feel like, have we taken a step back when it comes to progress in this country? And, somebody told me something that I felt was very profound. And they told me that there's a difference between climate and weather. And though we may be going through some bad weather, the climate is changing in this country to where, we're building towards more racial reconciliation. And so when our country decided to make Juneteenth, which is the date that slavery was announced being over officially in our country, when they decided to make that a national holiday, I felt like that was a sign of the climate in this country. Yes, there's still going to be some bad weather that we're going to have to take on and just push through. But I do feel like the climate is changing. I feel like as a Black surgeon, it's just important because for me, it helps us continue to make our colleagues and make our community more aware of what's not necessarily been highlighted or shared in the official education in our society. And so I do feel like we need to really start opening our eyes and really educating ourselves and our nation, our country. And that puts a visible spotlight on one of these events in our society and in our country. So for me, that's what it means to me is, let's really start taking this seriously. Let's not try to whitewash what's happened, and actually let's figure out a way for everybody to feel like they're first class citizen in this country and not a second class citizen.
And Dr. Crawford, you have been around a little bit longer than me and Dr. Jones. You may actually remember when they made MLK Day a federal holiday, which for some reason I thought happened a long time ago, but it was actually 2 years before I was born in 1983. So you've seen, as Dr. Jones has said, some of the climate changing. The Scoliosis Research Society is an international society. We have spine surgeons from all across the world, and they may be hearing this conversation saying, well, look, I'm in Africa. Things are not like what you guys are dealing with in America, or others may be saying, I'm in Singapore. Like, I don't really quite understand what you all are, talking about. What do you see? Can you say that you've seen an improved awareness in our society with regards to race? And what's your hope for the future as the society continues to have these conversations?
Well, let me backtrack to get to where you are and come from there. One, Yeah, I went to all black schools throughout, well, into medical schools. And to be honest with you, I had never been made aware of June 10th. I just had no knowledge of it whatsoever. It wasn't in the history books that were taught to us. And I went through the sit-ins and the segregated 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, well up until then. But we have entered a phase in our society and perhaps in the world, the killing of George Floyd, that was seen through the lens of millions of human beings across the globe, has brought an element at this point in time where, if, as Alvin said, reconciliation will be done, it will be done. And there are more people who are uh, personally committed, because it's not something they read in the newspapers. It wasn't something that somebody said. It was something they saw through their lens and their own eyes. And as a result of that, their antennas have been raised. And I think we're in a wonderful period. However, I've been in wonderful periods. I would like for all of us, especially persons who look like me, and persons who look like me who have the same commitment to unification, to take advantage of these and do it. And you'll realize at the end of the day, you only have to just do it. So we've had an unbelievable outpouring of things that are in the process of change, as Alvin has said. However, we have also had 4 years of unbelievable reversal of situations that could be done equally as quickly and as efficiently. I don't want to get into the critical theories of race or into the suppression, but reality is reality. You can't escape it. So I would like for my friends to be ideal. And we talk about OD&I, which is to get into diversity and inclusion and equity. But I like the IDEAL, and that would be, the A would be inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism. That is a commitment to eliminate racism, and then learning. And we can all learn. As Alvin was saying, we can all learn from each other and history as it's been reported today. But I'm at an age where I've seen good things and bad things. I'd like to continue to see good things, but I would also like to continue to age. So Alvin's going to have to, you and Alvin are going to have to make this thing work for me to get there.
Wow, that is so powerful, Dr. Crawford. And gosh, there's so much that we can unpack there, but I don't want to keep you guys here all day. Dr. Jones, uh, you know, uh, you have been a mentor to me, even though we're not that apart from age. And Dr. Crawford's been a mentor to both of us. How do you see yourself continuing the great legacy that Dr. Crawford has laid down in the field of spine deformity, the example he set for surgeons of all walks of life to continue kind of that strive for excellence? But I mean, because you have a personal relationship with him, how do you see yourself continuing his legacy?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jason. I feel sometimes like a toddler, try to put on his dad's shoes. Dr. Crawford has some real big, shoes to fill. But for me, I feel like I will have done him justice if I can carry on his legacy of mentorship and opening doors for people, in our community. And so for me, that is really my biggest, I think, drive and passion is really to continue to be committed to mentoring, specifically, Black males and, our community so that they feel like this is achievable, this is possible. And I want to use, my influence and my political capital, social capital to really help that because I do want to see more of us, in these roles. And I feel like we can continue to expand our actual excellence and reach in this country. Um, because before, the opportunities just really weren't there. And I think that now we're recognizing that we deserve to be at the table and we just need to give people the opportunities and actually be real equitable in giving those opportunities. So, I'm going to be an advocate and continue to do my role in my position where I am to see that come to fruition.
You know, one thing that we didn't get into, and I didn't, in terms of my years and the two of you, it was at one time, if you look like me, it was assumed that you would fail, and that would be either you would fail because of incompetence or the system would hold you down. As a result, it gave me an unlimited opportunity because I can only succeed by making it work. And so there was no mountain too high to climb, and God has been good to me. He's been good to me in having patience to survive some of the efforts that I've made in attempting to do corrections that had been considered. So I feel very fortunate with that, but also having the attitude that it's my, if failure is my style, then let me do it with getting the best results that have ever been achieved in human beings. And so I've made an effort to do that. And as I said, I'm not the victim type personality. And I want to hard charge and make it really solid and make it work. And Alvin mentioned something that we started, that is Black Men in Medicine Cincinnati, which is a mentoring group for African-American males specifically. And it's bad for a surgeon whose life has been of adolescent females to go into a select African-American males. African-American males have had a bad role. And there's been a diminution of African-American males in the field of health sciences, let alone in medicine and dentistry and all of that. So through the University of Cincinnati, I'm making an effort now to put into play African-American success stories who are professionals, so that those who would come behind us would not be in the conundrum of, I can't see what I can be, but having exposure to all of those human beings to let them know it's possible to do it. And if we can, quote unquote, connect them, we consider it sort of like a dating service, to connect them to professionals in areas that they'd like to do. And then it works out. And we have, in addition, although we're not focused on the recipient being a majority, but we have majority individuals who are very comfortable in helping out and exposing the kids and making it work. So again, I'd sort of like to summarize the wonderful opportunity that we have that may be self-limiting, in that we've seen these opportunities before to work hard in making it all work. And that's pretty much where I am today.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Crawford, Dr. Jones, for taking your time out on this wonderful Juneteenth day to share your stories. And we hope that our listeners have really, again, these are both amazingly dynamic surgeons, and we hope you enjoyed it. We want to also thank the Scoliosis Research Society for allowing us to use their platform to talk about these issues on Juneteenth. We want you guys to stay tuned, because around this time next Saturday, we're going to be talking with Dr. Michael Ain, who is the first and likely only orthopedic surgeon to have achondroplasia. And hearing his story and the types of patients that he has treated along his career, I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. But again, today, Dr. Jones, Dr. Crawford, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
All right.
My regards to all of our patients.
Yes, definitely. All right. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Take care. And happy Father's Day to both of you all.
Thank you, and the two of you, and all fathers around the globe.
Yes.